Today will am I audible?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So today we'll discuss far field approximation. How to find out far field from what we have discussed up to now. Using that knowledge, how we can find out far field and what are the approximations that we are going to make and the justification for those approximations. So that is what we are going to discuss today. In that respect, today is one of the important classes. We'll start with assumptions or the assumption. Then we'll look at what are the approximations that we are using. Then we'll justify those approximations. After that, we'll go to the far field conditions. Then we'll characterize the far field characterization process. Then we'll find out what are the radiation fields, then the radiation vector, then radiation potential, which is different from vector potential. Then we'll revisit coordinate systems. From that, we'll move on to spherical length. Then we'll use this knowledge, what we learned up to this, for radiation field computation. Then we'll go for a vector decomposition of the radiation. Finally, we'll stop at radiation fields. So these are the points that we are going to discuss today. Don't worry, it will not take much time. Only thing that we require is your concentration. So please try to concentrate and try to understand what we are going to discuss today. So let me start with the assumption. For the assumption, as we have seen in the last class or in the first class also, first, second classes also, that we take a source point or a source region. In the source region, we have a source which can be a current source or which can be a source of charges. Then we are observing the effect at the observation point, which is at a distance p from the source point. Source point is located at p dash, observation point is located at p. We are at the origin. So from the origin, the position vector for p dash is r dash. Position vector for p is r, little r. Little r dash, little r represent the position vectors for the source point and the observation point. In this, we approximate that, or we assume that little r is much greater than little r dash. Then we see we find the distance between p dash and p, which is the distance between the source point and the observation point. The observation point is also called the far field point. So that distance we take as since r dash and r are position vectors, so we can find out this distance as the magnitude of the difference of these two position vectors. So capital R is equal to magnitude of the difference between r and r dash, which will be equal to, or which will be approximately equal to, this we will see later, which will be approximately equal to r minus r cap dot r dash. R cap is the unit vector along r. Then if we take the dot product, then that dot product r dash dot r cap or r cap dot r dash gives us the projection of r dash onto r. So that will be r cap dot r dash will be equal to r dash cos alpha, where alpha is the angle between r and r dash. This we had discussed earlier also. Now let me drop. Now we can see a triangle P, P dash Q. In this triangle, let us drop a perpendicular from the point P dash onto the side OP. So that meets the side OP at the point Q. So P dash Q is the perpendicular from the point P dash onto the side OP. Then if that is done, then OQ naturally will be equal to R dash cos alpha, or which will be the projection of R dash onto PO or onto R. So what are the assumptions? The assumption that I make or that we make for analysis will be on the far field point R is very far away from the current source or the charge source, whatever source we are using, it will be very far away, which means R is much greater than R dash, and that is the typical spatial extent or the extent in space of the current source is very small compared to the distance of observation from the origin. Now on this R, or the distance of the observation point, varies over the current source. So R has to be much greater than L, which is the typical extent of the current distribution. L or D, last class we took D. So after this I will take D. So a capital R will be much greater than D or L, where L or D is the typical extent of the current distribution. Extent means the maximum size of the source, current source. Okay. Now you can look into this figure again. In this triangle P dash Q, P dash is approximately equal to PQ, which is equal to OP minus OQ. Now you can ask me that we are seeing a triangle, right angle triangle, P dash Q. How can we say that P dash is equal to PQ? The answer is very simple. You know, the point P is at a very large distance from P dash, which means we can take the point P to be at infinite distance from P dash, and we know that two parallel lines meet at infinity distance. So in that respect, we can say P dash is approximately equal to PQ, or you can do this right now. Draw a very small line, maybe 1 millimeter or 2 millimeter line. Then draw a right angle triangle using that small line as the height of the right angle triangle. Then you can see that the hypotenuse and the base of your right angle triangle will be almost equal if the hypotenuse and the base are large. So this is 1 mm. You take the sides, hypotenuse and base, to be at least 10 cm or 12 cm. So then you can see that those are almost equal. They are almost joining and they look almost parallel. So that you can see for yourself doing a simple experiment. Now after this assumption, we will do some approximations. One approximation we have just seen. Then let us see those approximations in detail. Same picture, remember the same figure. So the figure is on the bottom corner of the right hand. Now what we will do is we will expand R, capital R, in terms of little r prime upon little r using Taylor series up to the second order. In the last class, we used binomial expansion. In this class, I will take a different route, but the result will be same. Just to show that binomial expansion and Taylor series expansion are going to give you same result if we consider up to the first order term. So we'll expand that using Taylor series up to the second order. Now, if you do that, we have seen capital R is the absolute difference between little r and little r prime. So that we can write as root over of little r square minus 2 little r dash cos alpha plus r dash square. This you can also see from the triangle using this value. Little r dot little r dash is equal to little r dash cos alpha. Use that. Here you can find it out. How it is done? R minus r dash absolute is root over of r minus r dash square. What is r minus r dash square? It is r minus r dash dot r minus r dash. So if we do that, then r dot r is equal to r square minus r dash dot minus r dash is equal to r dash square. Then you are left with minus 2 times r dot r dash. R dot r dash you can write out as 2r r dash cos alpha. If you take for r in the figure, you can see we have r cap dot r dash is equal to r dash cos alpha. R cap is the unit vector. Now if you take the complete vector r, then that will be r dash dot r dash. So that will be r dash cos alpha. So from that you are getting this cos alpha 2r dash cos alpha. Now let us rewrite that as by taking r square common. If I take r square common from the bracketed term, then root over of r square is equal to r. So I take little r outside. Then inside the square root will be 1 minus 2 r dash upon r cos alpha plus r dash upon r square. Just divide every term by r square. So first term is 1, second term is 2 r dash upon r, because you have in the numerator r, denominator r square. So that gives you this. Cos alpha remains as it is, plus r dash square by r square. So that I can write as r dash upon r whole square. So now let me expand this term using the Taylor series approximation. If I use Taylor series approximation to expand this term, r remains as it is outside. Inside will be 1 minus the whole thing, whatever it is there. So 1 minus x. X will be 2 r dash by r cos alpha plus r dash by r square. So if I write that in Taylor series expansion, it will be 1 minus x minus 1 upon 8 into x square. Okay. So that is what I am going to write. So this will be approximately equal to r into r whole into 1 minus r dash upon r cos alpha plus 2 r dash upon r dash upon 2r whole square. That is actually r dash square upon 2r square. You can see that r dash square by 4r square into 2. That gives you r dash square by 2r square. So that I am writing for simplicity of making the equation. I am writing it as 2 r dash by 2r square. You can also write it as r dash upon 2r square. Then minus 1 by 8. This term comes from the from the Taylor series. So minus 1 by 8 whole into minus 2 r dash by r cos alpha plus r dash by r square whole square. Okay, so now let us rewrite that as r into 1 minus r dash upon r cos alpha. So that remains as it is, plus 2 r dash upon 2 r square minus, now there is 1 by 8 into 2 whole square of 2. So that gives me whole square of 2 is 4. So that I will take into account. So ultimately what I will get is 2 into r dash upon 2r square, or that is r dash upon 2 r dash square upon 2r square cos square alpha. Now let me take 2 r dash upon 2 r square common. If I take that common, then I will get 1 minus cos square alpha within the bracket. If I take that common, 1 minus cos square alpha gives me sin square alpha. Therefore, under Taylor series approximation, using Taylor series expansion, keeping only up to the second order term, all other higher order term we are neglecting. Reason is all other higher order terms will have r square, r cube or r4 etc. in their denominator. Now since we are considering r to be very large, a large quantity squared or cubed or to the power 4 in the denominator will contribute almost nothing. So those will be neglected. So if I neglect that, I will get r is equal to r minus r dash cos alpha plus 2 r dash upon 2r square sin square alpha when r is much greater than r dash. Now when we use this r value, capital R value, in our expressions for field calculation or potential calculation, in all those cases we will have a numerator and we will have a denominator. The numerator will have an exponent component, denominator will have normal r component. So for the numerator, we will consider r, capital R, as little r minus little r dash cos alpha, which is equal to little r minus little r cap dot r dash. So we will neglect the second order term. And for the denominator, we will consider r is equal to r minus r cap dot r dash, that will be approximately equal to r. For the denominator, capital R will be equal to little r, that is what we are going to consider. For the numerator, capital R will be little r minus little r dash cos alpha, which is equal to little r minus little r cap dot r dash. Remember these two, I will justify them. Why will take in the numerator this value, in the denominator this value? Why this inconsistency for numerator and denominator? That I will justify right now. So we'll go to look at the justification of the approximation that we have made up to now. Now the first thing that we noticed is there is inconsistency in the numerator and denominator. The numerator contains the exponent term and the denominator contains the r term. So therefore there is an inconsistency. Why this inconsistency? The reason is we can always, we cannot neglect this term r cap dot r dash in all cases, particularly if we are using multipole expansion. If we are using an analysis using multipole expansion, multipole means many number of poles, and we are integrating or summing over the result of all those poles. In that case, we cannot neglect r cap dot r dash. That is first thing that we have to remember. But we can neglect them in the denominator of the radiation problem. Reason is, in the denominator, what is there? Capital R, right? Capital R we are approximating as little r. Now, what is the difference between capital R and little r? The difference between capital R and little r, from the figure you have seen, is r cap dot r dash, which is a very small quantity. R dash is very small compared to r, and we are multiplying cos alpha with that. So again, maximum value will be 1, otherwise it will be less than 1. So that is very small. Now the denominator again is in terms of r only. It does not contain any term which is dependent on theta or phi. Now the radiation field, we know, depends on theta and phi. Radiation field distribution of the electric field in the far field zone depends on theta and phi. Right? The distribution depends on theta and phi. Magnitude or amplitude depends on r. So for the distribution, r has no contribution. Therefore, in the r, for the r, we can take this approximation that we can neglect r cap dot r dash. But we cannot neglect that in the exponent, because r cap dot r dash gives us quantities which are related to or which depends on theta and phi. So that is in the numerator, or that is available in the exponent term. So since it is available in the exponent term, we cannot neglect that in the exponent term. Otherwise, we will lose the distribution part on, or the variation of distribution part on theta and phi. So to avoid that, we keep it in the exponent. But if we neglect it in the denominator, then there is no problem. Therefore, we can neglect safely in the denominator. Now, look at this term, which is the third term that we have neglected. This is the third term in the expansion for capital R. We have kept the first term 1, then minus we have kept the second term r cap dot r dash. Then we have neglected this term r dash square upon 2r square, which I am writing like this: r dash square upon 2r square sine square alpha. So we are neglecting this not only in the denominator but also in the numerator. And just now I told that in the denominator we cannot neglect anything that is determining or that is controlling the distribution of the field based on or dependent on theta and phi. Now this one, 2 r dash upon 2r whole square, or r dash square upon 2r square sine square alpha, clearly depends or clearly is a function of theta and phi. So how can we neglect this in the exponent term? In the numerator, we have neglected this. How can we neglect this in the numerator, this and the other higher order terms? How can we neglect that? So that also needs to be justified. Now remember that in the exponent, all these terms are multiplied by k. The exponent is e to the power j k dot r. right? For the R, we are making the approximation. So it has a K term multiplied by this. So this will be multiplied by K, right? All these are multiplied by K. K is equal to 2 pi upon lambda. So this multiplied by 2 pi by upon lambda, and when R is very large, this will give us a value which is approximately equal to 0. So this will be e to the power 0. E to the power 0 is equal to 1. Since these are approximately equal to 0, when we multiply them with k, they give approximately equal to 0. So the values, exponent values due to the second order term and other higher order terms will be approximately equal to 1, since they will be very near to 1, close to 1. Therefore, if we neglect them, anything into 1 gives you the same thing. So if we neglect them, that is not going to affect us. Therefore, we can always neglect these terms, right, in the exponent term. Then, in addition to that, we know R, in addition to this value, R much greater than R dash. And now we can have K R dash square upon R is much less than 1, which means R will be much greater than 2 pi R dash square by lambda. If I put 2 pi by lambda for K in this expression, so remember two terms. One is R is much greater than R dash. So in addition to that, the second approximation or the second term that is required for neglecting the second and higher order terms in the exponent is K R dash square upon R must be much less than 1, which must approach 0, so that exponent terms due to this K R dash square upon R will be equal to 1. So K R dash square upon R is less than R. K is 2 pi by lambda. So if I do that, multiply both the sides by R, then I can see that R is, or little r, is much greater than 2 pi R dash square upon lambda. So this is an additional requirement for neglecting the second and higher order term in the exponent, right? So we have two requirements now. The first requirement is R is much greater than R dash for the far field. Second requirement is for the distribution of the field. To find out the distribution of the field in terms of theta and phi, we must have R much greater than 2 pi R dash square upon lambda. So two requirements are now there. If we satisfy these two requirements, then we justify neglecting the second order and higher order term in the Taylor series expansion. Now, when 2 R dash, now you can see on the right hand side, R is much greater than 2 pi R dash square lambda, or pi 2 R dash square upon lambda. Let me take 2 R dash square to be equal to D, where D is the diameter of the sphere which encloses the antenna, which completely encloses the antenna. Smallest diameter of the sphere, of a sphere, which can completely enclose the antenna, is capital D. So that will be equal to 2 R dash is equal to capital D. Now if I put that, then my R becomes much greater than pi D by lambda, right? Sorry, pi D square by 2 lambda. Right? So R will be much greater than pi D square by 2 lambda. So D, 2 R dash is equal to D. D square is equal to 4 R dash square. So if I put that 4 R dash square there, 4 R dash square is equal to D. So multiply by 2, divide by 2. So that becomes pi D square by 2 lambda. So R has to be much greater than pi d square by 2 lambda. Now let us look at the conditions for the far field. So these are the approximations, their justifications that we have seen up to now. Now let us see under what condition we can calculate far field or we can compute the far field. By convention, what we do is we approximate pi as 4. Although pi is equal to 3 into 3.141, we approximate it to be approximately 4 as a thumb rule. So if I take pi approximately 4, put it in the previous expression for r much greater than d square by 2 lambda, pi d square by 2 lambda, taking pi approximately equal to 4, this gives me r much greater than 2d square by lambda, because for pi I write 4, numerator I have 2, so denominator I have 2, so denominator and numerator they cancel out, leaving 2 in the numerator, so 2d square by lambda. Now remember this, or please give attention to this, that I have taken, or we are considering here pi to be greater than its value. Its original value or exact value is 3.14. We are considering it approximately 4, which means we are not going to affect the distance case. R is much greater than, suppose R is much greater than pi, or R is greater than pi. So if I take pi as 4, then R is greater than 4. So R will be at least 4. So instead of being 3, it will be 4, which is larger quantity. So that will automatically satisfy the condition that it is greater than pi. Right? So that is why we use this convention of R much greater than 2d square by lambda. So this is one convention that we use. Okay. So then let us, if we use this convention, what will be the far field condition? Now there can be two conditions. The first condition, or condition A, is R is much greater than R dash, little r is much greater than R dash. This I have told you in the previous slide also, that there will be two conditions. The first condition that we must adhere to is little r is much greater than R dash. This must be satisfied at all times. And the second condition will now become R is, or little r is much greater than 2d square upon lambda. So these are the two conditions which are to be satisfied for the far field region. Now, when d will be of the order of lambda, or d is greater than lambda, then what will happen? B will essentially be equivalent to A. The condition B will be equivalent to condition A. Right? But when d is much less than lambda, then A, condition A implies condition B. Now let us take one example, simple example. So say d is equal to 0.1 lambda. If d is equal to 0.1 lambda, then 2 into 0.1 square, which is 2 into 0.01 lambda square upon lambda. So this will be 0.02 lambda. So R has to be greater than 0.02 lambda. That comes from the second condition. Now if I rest there that my R is greater than 0.02 times lambda, I am actually in the near field, because the first condition is not satisfied. The first condition is also to be satisfied. R has to be much greater than R dash, where R dash is 0.1. Now, but my R has become 0.02 lambda. R dash is 0.1 lambda. So R is not greater than 0.1 lambda. It is 0.02 lambda according to condition B. So A is not satisfied, which means I am not in the far field. Right? So similarly, so whenever we are considering far field condition, we have to consider both these. If D is equal to 5 lambda, say D is equal to 5 lambda. So then this R will be greater than 2 into 25 lambda square by lambda, which is 50 lambda. R is greater than 50 lambda. So R is greater than 50 lambda. Now my R dash will be how much? R dash will be R is 50 lambda. So 50 lambda has to be greater than R dash. R dash size is about D, which is 5 lambda. 50 lambda is greater than 5 lambda. So far field condition is satisfied. So both A and B are to be satisfied when D is of the order of lambda or D is greater than lambda. B is essentially equivalent to A, that we saw from the second example. When D is much less than lambda, then A implies B, which means if A is satisfied, then automatically B is satisfied. When D is much less than lambda, as I told you, if D is equal to 0.1 lambda, then I have to take R much greater than 0.1 lambda. That can be 1 lambda or 2 lambda. So R dash will be 2 lambda. R dash will be 2 lambda. Then put that in the second condition. R is greater than 2D square by lambda. That is 0.2 lambda. Or from the first condition, it is 2 lambda. Therefore, A automatically implies B is satisfied. All right. So remember these two things, two conditions for the far field. R has to be much greater than R dash, and at the same time, R has to be much greater than 2D square by lambda. If any one of you, those who are attending this, is going to be in the field of antennas, this is something that will be required for lifelong application. For example, if you are taking measurement of an antenna, far field measurement, or you are going to find out the directivity, gain, etc., or the far field of an antenna, you can do that using only these two conditions. If these two conditions are not satisfied, you cannot do that. The measurement that you take without satisfying these two conditions is a faulty measurement, is an erroneous measurement. Sometimes what we do is, if we have an antenna, we take it into a room which is called anechoic chamber, anechoic, no echo from that chamber. So there will be no electromagnetic echo in that chamber, and we measure the radiation field of the antenna in anechoic chamber. At that time, we usually forget that we have to deal with the size of the antenna and the distance between the test antenna and the standard antenna. That distance is R, that must satisfy these two conditions. So if you have a large antenna, usually if you have a large antenna, this distance becomes so large that you have to go outside. Inside a chamber, we cannot measure a larger antenna. For smaller antennas, we can do measurements inside a chamber. So this is something that I learned while doing my PhD. I went to one of the defense labs with one of my antennas. They started measuring the antenna first, measuring the size of antenna, asked me what is the frequency. Then they allowed me to use that antenna in their anechoic chamber for measurement. Otherwise, I would have got faulty results. From there, I have learned that these two conditions must be satisfied. So now let me, once this condition is satisfied, what we did now, we started with an approximation. Then we justified that approximation. Then we saw that for justifying those approximations, we require two conditions to be satisfied for the far field. So this we have seen up to now. Now, if this is done, then let us see how we can characterize the far field characterization. Now, from the previous slide, or what we discussed up to now, from that you can definitely say that there is a thin line between the far field or the Fraunhofer region and the near field or the Fresnel region, and that line is R is equal to 2d square by lambda. This line must always be there. R is equal to 2d square by lambda. This divides the far field from the near field. So for characterization, you have to look into this. In the right hand side, you can see the picture in which we are dividing the two zones, far field region and the near field region, using this expression. The field source is J, which is enclosed within a volume whose extension is capital D. So from that source, we draw a radius of 2d square by lambda. So beyond 2d square by lambda will be my far field. It cannot be within this field. Then the other part is there, but it must be beyond this. 2d square by lambda is the minimum distance from the source from where the far field region may start. I am saying may start. I am not saying that will start. May start means at least you have to be at this distance. Then you have to look whether R much greater than R dash is satisfied. If it is not satisfied, then you have to extend this distance. So after extending that distance, you will get the far field region. So at least you have to be this much away from your source. Now, what are the property of characterizing the far field? Right? And the properties include or depend on the radiation angular distribution. And the radiation angular distribution is independent of R. Remember this, it is dependent on the angular values theta and phi. It is completely independent upon R. So that is what characterizes the far field. Far field is characterized by angular distribution of the radiation, which is independent upon R. Angular distribution is independent upon R. Right? So in that, what is distributed? The field is distributed, which means the energy or the power is distributed at a given value of R over different values of theta and phi. So keeping R fixed, if we vary theta and phi, what will be the pattern? That gives you the far field pattern. So far field characterization property is basically the angular distribution of radiation. So with that knowledge, we will next see that we can easily ignore the first order term kr cap dot r dash from the exponent under a special condition. Up to now, we have taken in the exponent, in the numerator, e to the power jk dot r dot jk r cap dot r dash, that we have taken in the exponent term, and we have neglected the second order terms, second order and higher order terms. Now, is it possible to neglect the first order term? It is possible only under a special case. The condition is k r dash, k little r dash must be much less than 1 so that the contribution due to this k little r dash in the exponent will be approximately 1. So that contribution becomes 1 means it is not contributing anything, right? So that becomes unit. So k r dash much less than 1 again implies that r dash is much less than lambda, right? So r dash is much less than lambda means the size of the source, and the distance of the source from the origin is much less than lambda, is very small compared to the wavelength. If that happens, only then we can neglect this term, the first term. This is possible when only if we have a short antenna, electrically short antenna, very small in size, which is electrical size. So electrically very small size, the antenna size is electrically very small, then this will be possible. So for this, D has to be, capital D has to be much less than lambda. If D is much less than lambda, then we are dealing with long wavelength or low frequency limits. Wavelength is very large or frequency is very small. So in those limits, this is possible. Example is the Hertzian dipole that we have considered. We considered it to be a very small dipole or a very small current carrying conductor or a very small element, which is a separation of two charges q and minus q by a small distance, molecular distance or atomic distance, which is extremely small. So that is an example where we can neglect k r cap dot r dash. If you remember, this actually we have done in the calculation of or in the analysis of Hertzian dipole. We have not considered k r cap dot r dash. Everywhere we have neglected that. Now let me come to a term which is called radiation vector. Once we are equipped with this background, let me come to a term which is called radiation vector. We know the wave number vector k. We are using it in the exponent. So this vector lies in the direction of the field vector r. That is the first thing that you should remember. K lies in the direction of the field vector r, and it has a magnitude of k. Vector k has a magnitude of k. Therefore, you can write vector k as magnitude of k into r cap. Why? R cap is along the direction of the field. So field vector direction is r cap. K is the magnitude, and therefore vector k is equal to k r cap. So we are using this throughout our discussion up to now. So we'll keep on continuing this. Now in the far field approximation, we have something called retarded vector potential for a single frequency or when we consider time harmonic cases. So everything that we'll consider from now on is time harmonic case. Time harmonic case means it has only one frequency, so single frequency. So the retarded single frequency potential is given as AR is equal to mu e to the power minus jkr upon 4 pi r, then an integration term over the volume. The integration is over the source j, which depends on r dash. So j r dash e to the power j k dot r dash integrated over volume. See, there are two terms here. One is the integral term, one is the non-integral term. The yellow highlight portion shows us the non-integral term, and the red highlight portion shows us the pink highlight portion shows us the integral term. So we have two distinct terms here, one integral, one non-integral. The non-integral factor contains the dependence on R. So the radial dependence, which is on R, is completely within the non-integral factor. So the non-integral factor is not contributing to the field distribution or to the angular field distribution. The first part, which is in the yellow, is not contributing to the angular field distribution at all. But the integral factor, which is in the pink, that contains the angular dependency, because in the exponent term we have k dot r dash. So that is where the angular dependency is hidden. So that contains the angular dependency. So this plays an important role in determining the directional properties of the radiated field. Which one? The pink portion, right? The yellow portion or the non-integral factor has no role in determining the directional properties. Directional properties completely depend on the integral factor, right? Therefore, we can use a special notation for this factor, non-integral factor, which actually is giving us the directional properties. So let us write that as Fk is equal to integration of j e to the power jk dot r dash of integrated over the volume. So the second term we are writing as Fk. The first term non-integral term. So AR is basically the non-integral term into Fk, where Fk is the integral term. So that is what we are going to do now. So with that, we will now come to something called radiation potential. Give me some time. Let me take some water. Now try to remember the form of the second term, non-integral term, which is the radiation vector. That also I call the radiation vector. Fk is the radiation vector. Now if you remember the expression for that, it is, you can remember that, or you can correlate it to a spatial Fourier transform of the current density. We have current density e to the power jkr integrated over volume, right? So it is the spatial Fourier transform, 3D, in fact 3D spatial Fourier transform of the current density. So the radiation vector Fk is the 3D spatial Fourier transform of the current density. So this depends on omega or k and the directional unit vector r cap, because we have in the exponent form e to the power j k dot r. So it depends on these two things. K is equal to omega root over of mu 0 epsilon 0 or omega upon c. Therefore, it depends on omega, the angular frequency, or the wave vector, and the directional unit vector r cap. And it is completely defined by the spherical coordinates of angles, angular spherical coordinates, which are theta and phi. So these are two important things that we must remember. So if we remember that this vector, the radiation vector, depends on omega and is completely defined by the spherical coordinate angles theta and phi, then we can say whenever it is appropriate, we can indicate it only through angular dependencies. So f is a function of theta and phi. The radiation vector is a function of theta and phi. Now where k has gone? Actually k inputs within each theta and phi. Therefore, instead of k, I am explicitly writing theta and phi. K implicitly indicates that it includes theta and phi. Now let us write it explicitly. So f theta and phi, the radiation vector, it is appropriate wherever it is appropriate. We will indicate the angular dependency as f theta phi. So this is appropriate where? This is appropriate in the radiation field. So radiation field, for the radiation field, if we use this, then the potential, vector potential will be given as A, which is mu e to the power minus jkr upon 4 pi r f theta phi. Now you can ask me one question. In the numerator of the non-integral part mu e to the power minus jkr upon 4 pi r, we have got minus jkr. Why this is not dependent on theta phi? Now you know within the integration and outside the integral, the difference is inside the integral we took the dot product or the scalar product of k dot r. Outside there is no scalar product. It is a simple multiplication, scalar multiplication. So jkr is equal to j omega upon cr or j omega root mu 0 epsilon 0 r. No question of theta phi there. So the first term does not have a theta phi. Now this vector, this AR vector, in this form, we call it as the radiation potential instead of vector potential, since we are considering with the radiation field or in the far field zone only. So f theta phi, therefore this potential, we call it as the radiation potential. So from now on, we will deal with radiation potential. Wherever we are saying vector potential, it implies implicitly that we are meaning radiation potential. So AR is equal to mu e to the power minus jkr upon 4 pi r into the radiation vector f theta phi. So with this background, I think we are equipped enough to look into the radiation part. But before that, I hope you remember the coordinate system. I will just briefly revisit the coordinate systems so that we can use them in the next part on radiation. Now here I am showing you, this picture shows the coordinate systems. 3 coordinate systems are actually packed into this figure. You have x, y, z, which is the Cartesian coordinate system. You also have phi, rho, g, which is the cylindrical coordinate system. Then we have phi, r, theta, which is the spherical coordinate system. So we have 3 coordinate systems here. So one point is there r. That point we are going to represent using this coordinate system. So how to represent that? The coordinates representing the vector r. If I have a vector r, what will be its coordinates? In the Cartesian coordinate system, it will be x, y, z. In the cylindrical coordinate system, it will be rho, phi, g. In the spherical coordinate system, it will be r, theta, phi. So from this figure, you can see the vector r, its positions in terms of Cartesian coordinate system, cylindrical coordinate system, and spherical coordinate systems will be represented by this. This I am going to use in the next 3 slides. Okay. Now, if we know this, then we can say that it is only one vector, r is only one vector, and we are representing it by 3 coordinate systems separately. Therefore, all these 3 coordinate systems must have some relation among themselves. So we'll try to find out the relations between these coordinate systems. But remember that our aim is basically finding the far field solution. Why we will do that? Basically to find out the far field solution of Maxwell's equations and the directional patterns of the antenna systems. So keeping this in view, we will discuss the coordinate system. Now, when we keep this in view, the most appropriate or the most easiest way, simplest way, convenient way of dealing with problems which are related to this area, far field solutions of Maxwell's equation and directional patterns of antenna systems, is the spherical coordinate system. So we will ultimately concentrate on the spherical coordinate system. Right. So before that, let us see what the figure that we saw earlier in the previous slide. Let us dissect that figure. So we are going to dissect that figure. We are looking at the XY plane. In the XY plane, we have the rho vector of the cylindrical coordinate system. Phi is there. So there will be a rho vector. So unit vector for rho is rho cap. Unit vector for phi is phi cap. Those are shown here. And XY also are shown here. For any point, the XY coordinates, rho phi coordinates, X direction, X cap, Y cap, rho cap, phi cap. Everything can be seen if we look at the XY plane of the coordinate system. So this will help us in formulating the relationship between cylindrical coordinate system and the Cartesian coordinate system. Later we will extend it to the spherical coordinate system. Similarly, look at another plane. This is the Z rho plane. First we saw the XY plane. Now let us see the Z rho plane. If we are looking at the Z rho plane, then what we have? Along rho we have rho cap. Along Z we have Z cap. So these two will be there. We have any point there. So from the point, drop a perpendicular onto rho. That will give the Z point or G value of the coordinate. Distance from the origin is R. And from 0 to the point where the perpendicular meets the rho axis gives me the rho value. So I have got the rho value. I have got the Z value. We have got R vector. Then for the R vector that is making an angle theta with Z axis. For the point we have now what is the direction of R cap, what is the direction of theta cap for the R vector. So these two we have seen from this coordinate. Now once we see this, then we can say that this rho, which is the perpendicular drawn from the tip of the R vector onto the onto the rho axis, is equal to R sine theta, because theta is the angle between G axis and R cap. Therefore, this will be R sine theta. Similarly, along Z, we will have, if I drop a perpendicular, that will give me Z is equal to R cos theta. So these two will get no confusion on that. Then what will be my R cap? R cap will be Z cos theta plus rho cap, G cap cos theta plus rho cap sin theta. That comes from these two. Rho is equal to R sin theta, G is equal to R cos theta. So R cap is equal to combination of these two. So r cap will be g cap cos theta plus rho cap sin theta, vector addition of whatever is in the rho direction and what is in the g direction, that gives me the r cap, vector addition. So I get r cap. Then I will get theta cap. What will be theta cap? Theta cap will be minus g cap sin theta plus rho cap cos theta. From where I get this? Look at the direction of the theta cap. It is towards rho axis from g axis. So since it is towards rho axis from g axis, so if I look from the z axis, it is in the negative, its component along the z axis will be in the negative direction. Therefore, minus g cap sin theta. Then along the rho axis, it will have rho cap cos theta. Just draw a line at that point along the rho theta vector, draw for the theta vector, divide it into two components. One component is along rho, one component is along z. If you do that, you will find that the angle between the theta cap and rho cap is cos theta, and because of that you will get rho cap cos theta, and it is in the negative direction. So negative direction of g, therefore you will get minus g cap sin theta. So you have now got r cap, theta cap. Then next is, what is rho cap? Look at rho cap. It will be r cap sin theta plus theta cap cos theta. This you can use the same principle that I have used in the previous case. Use the same principle. You can find out what will be rho cap. It will be r cap sin theta plus rho cap cos theta. Finally, the g cap in terms of theta cap and rho cap will be, g cap will be equal to r cap cos theta minus theta cap sin theta. So these are some important relationships that we are going to use. Now let us find out the relationship between Cartesian and cylindrical coordinate system and extend that to the spherical coordinate system. So for that, the first thing is what we have done. We viewed the xy plane and z rho plane. So first view the xy plane and z rho plane. Then use the fact x is equal to rho cos phi, that we have found out. Y is equal to rho sin phi, that also we have found out. Rho cap is equal to x cap cos phi plus y cap sin phi. This also we saw. Phi cap is equal to minus x cap sin phi plus y cap cos phi. This also we saw in the previous slide. Then expand that. Replace rho and rho cap. Whatever is the value of rho and rho cap, those will be replaced now. So start with x is equal to rho cos phi. Right? Rho is equal to r sin theta. Therefore, x will be r sin theta cos phi. Right? And so that gives me the value of x in terms of theta, phi, and r. So spherical coordinate, x is equal to r sin theta cos phi. Okay. Then r cap. R cap is equal to rho cap sin theta plus g cap cos theta. Replace this rho cap. For rho cap, we can put x cap cos phi plus y cap sin phi. So put that for rho cap, that into sin theta plus z cap cos theta. So that gives me the value of r cap, x cap cos phi sin theta plus y cap sin phi sin theta plus g cap cos theta. So that is for r cap. Okay. So then we know x, we have found out x is equal to r sin theta cos phi. We can similarly see y is equal to r sin theta sin phi and z is equal to r cos theta. This we can easily see from the previous figures. So if we use them, then we find r cap to be this, what we have found out in the previous slide, in the left hand side. So we get r cap. Then theta cap will be x cap cos phi cos theta plus y cap sin phi cos theta minus g cap sin theta. What we are doing between r cap and theta cap, look at what we are doing. For the theta terms, wherever there is sin, replace it by cos. So r cap had sin theta, cos theta. Theta cap will have cos theta, sin theta. So that is how you will find out theta cap. Once you know what is r cap, you can easily find out theta cap. Simply replace sin theta by cos theta. Then phi cap is equal to minus x cap sin phi plus y cap sin phi. So this we have already seen in the previous slide. So r cap, theta cap, phi cap in terms of x, y, z we have found out, and x, y, z in terms of r theta phi we have found out. So now we are equipped with whatever is required for handling the spherical coordinate system in our further analysis. X, Y, Z, r theta phi. So everything we have found out now. We can use them. So let me now define something called the spherical length. So before I define that, let me explain this figure to you. This is a 3D figure of a portion of a sphere. Right? I am taking an infinitesimal portion on this sphere, which is on the surface, its area is ds. So how do you find the area? Area is product of the sides. Now in this case, the sides will be d theta, d phi, right? And so those will be the sides. Similarly, if I find out the volume for that, then again there will be dr. So elementary volume will be dr. We'll see ds is equal to r square d omega, which is equal to r square sin theta, d theta, d phi. This will prove in the coming slides. What is d phi? Elementary length along phi. What is d theta? Elementary length along theta. So d phi I can write as dl phi. D theta we can also write as dl theta. Right. So we will consider only infinitesimal length increment in each of the spherical unit vector. So those will be given as dlr, which is equal to dr, dl theta, this will be equal to r d theta, dl phi will be equal to r sin theta d phi. Remember these three equations. These are very important when we are going to use or find out the power or integrate over s pointing vector, etc. So in all those cases, we use this. Similarly, finding out or evaluating the vector A vector or finding the E field, H field, we'll use this when we'll use the spherical coordinate system. So dlr is equal to dr, dl theta, elementary length ln theta is equal to r d theta, dl phi is equal to r sin theta d phi. Then the surface elements will be ds, that is equal to r cap ds. Why r cap ds? Why ds is equal to r cap ds? You know, all area are vector quantity. So left hand side you can see s is bold, indicating that I am considering an elementary area vector. So ds is an elementary vector, area vector. So the r cap gives you the normal outward from that area. If you remember the previous vector, previous picture, r cap is normal outward from that area. So therefore, the direction of ds is always normally outward. So its direction, unit vector for its direction will be r cap. So ds is equal to r cap ds. Now let me write ds, which is in the right hand side. That is dl theta into d phi theta. Now put the values of dl theta and d phi theta that we have got. dl theta is r d theta, dl phi is r sin theta d phi. So therefore ds will be r square sin theta d theta d phi. Right, so and this is the magnitude of the elementary area on the surface of the sphere. So an elementary area subtends an elementary angle at the center of the sphere. That elementary angle is called the solid angle. Like a line subtends a one-dimensional angle, this subtends a three-dimensional angle. So that is called the solid angle d omega. So the solid angle d omega subtended by d theta d phi cone will be now ds is equal to r square d omega, from which we can always find out how it is ds is equal to r square d omega. You remember from the circle, if I consider a circle, then r into or dr is a portion of the perimeter. dr is equal to r d theta. dr is equal to r d theta. So that you remember, if it is r d theta, then here it will be ds is equal to r square d omega. Just we are following that. D theta is d omega, r becomes r square. So let me consider the spherical length. So radial unit vector, from this we can also say that the radial unit vector is completely determined by the polar and azimuthal angles. Now we have seen that. Once we have seen that, now let's look at this picture. This gives me PRDS as PR into R square into d omega. If I know the solid angle, then the power coming out of that solid angle, radiated power, will be dP, which is PRDS, that is equal to PR R square d omega, because ds is equal to R square d omega. This is what we are going to use later as we progress in our course. Not today, but later we are going to use this. Remember this, dP is equal to PR ds, which is PR into R square d omega. So if we integrate both the sides, we will get the total power. Now let us come to the important part of computing the radiation field computation. So that is something that we are going to consider. We are considering a localized current J, which is at a far distance from the observation point. So that is at a far distance from the localized current J, we will obtain radiation fields using the radiation vector potential A. How we will find out this? We will compute curl of A. So we'll start by computing curl of A, then we'll ignore any term that is falling off faster or that is decaying faster than 1 by R, which means which is decaying as 1 by R square or 1 by R cube. All those terms will neglect in computing curl of A. We'll start computing curl of A, neglect those terms. Let us see how we can do that. So curl of A now will be curl of mu e to the power minus jkr upon 4 pi r into F, because A is equal to the bracketed term on the right hand side. So that will be r cap curl, this delta operator is equal to r cap dou by dou r plus the angular derivatives. What are the angular derivatives? Dou by dou theta and dou by dou phi. So that is for the delta. R cap dou by dou r plus angular derivatives. So that is for delta. Then cross A. For A, I am writing the explicit form for the A. Now remember, this A is the radiation potential. Now this I can also write as minus jk r cap cross F into mu e to the power minus jk r by 4 pi r, which will be the first term. How I am getting this? You can easily see this is dou by dou r is an operator. So I have operated it on mu e to the power minus jk r by 4 pi r, right? And the cross product is r cap cross F. So r cap cross F remains there. Then minus jk into mu e to the power minus jk r by 4 pi r. Cross, when I operate that on mu e to the power minus jk r by 4 pi r, there are two terms, mu e to the power minus jk r and 4 pi r. When I operate it on minus jk r, I get minus jk r into e to the power minus jk r into mu. So that by 4 pi r. So that first term is there. The first term is there. The second term is a differentiation of 1 by 4 pi r, which will give me minus 1 by 4 pi r square into 2, right? So that will there will be r square term. So that is why I am writing this. So the first term remains as it is, plus order of 1 by r square. Everything is either 1 by r square or more than 1 by r square. Now what happens to the angular derivatives? I have done the derivation with respect to r. The derivative I have taken with respect to r. What happens to the angular derivative? If you remember the expression for the delta operator, then you can remember easily that the angular derivatives have 1 by r term or 1 by r square term. Now if they have 1 by r term or 1 by r square term, multiply that with 1 by 4 pi r. So you will always get terms which are 1 by r square or 1 by r cube. Those terms will be there. So they all are clubbed into this part, order of 1 by r square. So I have got the left hand, which is minus jk r cap cross F e to the power, mu e to the power minus jk r by 4 pi r. So the bracketed term, if I multiply that with F, I will get minus jk cross A plus order of 1 by r square. Now for the far field, I do not require the terms which are of the order of 1 by r square or larger than that. So I can always neglect that. So I can always neglect that. So now we have discussed this. Angular derivatives, their source is theta phi derivatives in the gradient. They operate on f theta phi, operating on f theta p. Already they have 1 by r factor in them, theta phi derivatives. So if we neglect that, then the rest of A will be only 1 by r. So what happens here is, if I take the angular derivative, all of A for these angular derivatives will have 1 by r square or 1 by r cube term. So therefore, when we are going to compute this dou r e to the power minus jk r upon r, we will always keep the derivatives of the numerator which are varying as 1 by r, and for the denominators that are decreasing as 1 by r square, those we are going to neglect. So we'll neglect the denominators that vary as 1 by r square, that has 1 by r square or r square term, others will keep. And so therefore, we can have a useful rule for order of 1 by r. Since we are interested only in 1 by r, we can always replace grad of f theta phi into e to the power minus jkr upon r by delta. Grad is delta operation. So delta we can replace always as minus jk, which is equal to minus jk r cap, because k is equal to jk r cap. Remember this, it is valid only in the radiation field. Only for radiation field computation, we can take delta as minus jk r cap. Not for near field computation, not for any other computation. Only specifically in the computation of radiation field. Now, if we do that, then curl of A is equal to minus jk cross minus jk cross A, right? So inside bracket, let me change, or let me interchange the cross products. So I will bring the bracketed term to the front and the front term to the inside. So that will give me minus of minus j into minus j. Minus j into minus j is minus 1. That into minus is 1. Therefore, I will get k cross A cross k. So curl of A is equivalent to k cross A cross k when we are considering the radiation field. Remember this. Now what is k? K is equal to r cap into k. So if I put that, then I will get k square, because inside I have got a k r cap, outside I have got a k r cap. K is scalar, so 2k, multiply that, that gives me k square into r cap cross A cross r cap. Now k square is equal to omega square mu epsilon, so put that, or you can also write that as omega square by c, and the rest of the terms remain as it is, r cap cross A cross r cap. So remember this. This is an useful relationship that we are going to use when we are going to calculate the fields. Now once we know that, we know this, then we can find out what is E. Right? Simply use that relationship that we have seen for the E. E is equal to j omega into A. So that part I can use now. E is equal to minus j k eta e to the power minus j k r by 4 pi r cap cross F cross r cap. Similarly, I can find out H as minus jk e to the power minus jkr upon 4 pi r cap cross F. Then if I compare these two equations, we can see that E is equal to eta H cross r cap. Right? Or we can also say H is equal to 1 upon eta r cap cross E. You know what is eta? Increasing impedance of the free space, or the wave impedance of the free space is called eta. Its value is 120 pi, or approximately 377 ohms. Now you can see E is equal to eta into H or something, right? Which means E is equal to 377 into H, which means H is 377 times smaller than E. So in terms of amplitude, E amplitude upon H amplitude will be equal to eta. H is 377 times smaller than E. So in terms of magnitude, H is small compared to E. Remember this. Then we have seen from this expression E is equal to eta H cross r cap, H is equal to 1 upon eta r cap cross E, or the above equation E is equal to, forget the scalar part, r cap cross F cross r cap, H is equal to r cap cross F. Now H is equal to r cap cross F. What does that indicate? H is perpendicular to r cap and F. E is equal to r cap cross F cross r cap. R cap cross F is H. Therefore, E is perpendicular to H and r cap, which means both E and H are orthogonal to r cap as well as orthogonal to each other. That means E, H and r cap, they are perpendicular to each other. So let us make some remarks looking at these equation. So the remarks is the radiated wave is similar to uniform plane waves because E, H and r cap, they form a right-handed vector system. Right? Uniform plane wave. In the uniform plane wave, you know, E, H and r cap are the direction of propagation. R cap is direction of propagation. E, H and direction of propagation are perpendicular to each other. E and H are in one plane. R cap is perpendicular to that plane. So it is similar to a uniform planar wave. E is always parallel to the transverse part of the F perpendicular of the radiation vector F. We'll see what is F perpendicular just now. H is always perpendicular to the radiation vector F. So this is what we have seen. Then we also see that the DC current source, when omega is equal to K is equal to 0, this is not going to radiate, because if you make omega or K equal to 0, then all these terms will become 0. E is equal to Jk, K is equal to 0, E is equal to 0. H is equal to minus Jk, K is equal to 0. That becomes 0. So there will be no radiation. Radiation fields will be 0. In the radiation field, you will get nothing if you are using DC sources. Only thing that you will get is in the near field region. Now, let me come back to the figure that I had showed you earlier for this solid angle. Now we have the source at the point O, and we are considering the radiated fields at a distance r from the source. R is much larger than the source size. Okay, and there we are considering a small area, and on that small area is extending or giving a solid angle at the source point, right? So at that area, the radiation vector or direction of propagation is outward in direction to the radius. So r cap, E and H are perpendicular. So they are in the plane of the area. And we are looking at theta phi variation. So theta phi variation is there. Now this F vector, which is my radiation vector, we can always decompose any vector into two components which are orthogonal to each other. So let us decompose F vector as Fr and F perpendicular. Fr is along the r direction. F perpendicular is perpendicular to the r direction. Now you also know that there is a vector identity which represents any vector F, or any vector, if you can take any vector, F is equal to r cap into r cap dot F plus r cap cross F cross r cap. Now this you can easily prove. Look at the second term. R cap cross F cross r cap is equal to r cap into r cap dot F minus r cap, this is equal to r cap dot r cap into F minus r cap into r cap dot F. So we have the first term is plus, same is repeated as a negative term. When you add that, that cancels out. R cap dot r cap is equal to 1. So F, you are left with F from the right hand side. So therefore, F can be represented by this. Now when we do this, look at the first term, it has r cap component. So the first term is along the r vector or along the radius. So it is radial. So the radial component for the F is given by the first term. So that is R cap FR. Or the second term is a cross product with R cap, which is a perpendicular, which will be perpendicular to R cap. Therefore, the second term is F perpendicular. And so I can write that as F is equal to R cap FR, that is the first term. F perpendicular, we will have two components, one along theta, one along phi. So that will be theta cap F theta plus phi cap F phi. F perpendicular will have two orthogonal components. So those two orthogonal components are along theta and phi. So F I can write as this. So from this also I can write R cap cross F is equal to, now multiply R cap on both the sides. So R cap cross F will be R cap cross R cap 0, R cap cross theta cap, that gives me phi cap, then R cap cross phi cap, that gives us minus theta cap. So R cap cross F will be phi cap F theta minus theta cap F phi. So similarly, F perpendicular will be equal to R cap cross F, R cap cross F into R cap, cross product with R cap. So if I take again cross product with R cap, then phi cap R cap, that gives us theta cap, then theta cap R cap, that gives us minus phi cap. So F perpendicular is theta cap F theta plus phi cap F phi. Right. Now out of these, we know only F theta and F phi are contributing to the field. Fr is not contributing to the field at any particular distance from the source. Right. As the field distribution is as per theta and phi. So F theta and F phi are contributing to the field. Now let me start by just for your reference, I am repeating that expression for F and for R cap F. If I repeat that, then R cap cross F is equal to R cap cross F perpendicular, because R cap cross R cap is 0. So R cap cross F is equivalent to R cap cross F perpendicular. That is the value that we have seen, phi cap F theta minus theta cap F phi. So ultimately, if I use this, then I will get E as for F. Now I can write for F, I can write now this value. Neglect the R cap term. So what is left is theta cap F theta plus phi cap F phi. And the multiplication term will be remaining as it is. We are not dealing with the multiplication term. We are carrying it forward. Similarly, H will be E cross R. So that will be phi cap F theta minus theta cap F phi. So we'll get these two equations for the E and H field. So that I can also write as E is equal to the multiplying term or the constant term into F perpendicular is my E, and my H is R cap into F perpendicular. So these are my E and H. That now we have got. Now once we get that, then we can say what happens or when we'll get only F theta. There are two terms, F theta and F phi. So whether in general we should get F theta and F phi, but there are special cases. So we'll consider now these special cases. One of the special cases when we are going to get only F theta, F phi will not come into play. That happens for all linear antennas and all arrays. Usually in those cases, we take Z axis in the direction of the antenna or in the direction of the source. So the radiation vector components are R and theta. R we are not interested because that takes care of the amplitude. The variation is in theta. Similarly, only F phi, that will get for loop antennas in XY plane or a microstrip antenna or various other antennas like that. The radiation vectors components are R and phi. We are not interested in terms of R. We will consider only phi. Both f theta and f phi with f phi is equal to plus minus j f theta, which means f phi and f theta are in phase quadrature. This will occur when we get the resulting field as a circularly polarized field. So if we are considering a circular polarization, then this will be there. Example is helical antenna. So we will use what we discussed now, or what we have discussed up to this point. We will use this knowledge in further taking our study into the antenna.